Howdy everyone. Before I get too far along, let me talk about what I've just been working on. So since I've got everything set up here with my aileron rigging and linkage, I've got everything connected to the controls inside the fuselage. I need to check the deflection of the ailerons. So here's how I did it. Again, fuselage is level. Using a bubble level and my digital level, which I've taken off, you set the stick 90 degrees to the fuselage. Once you have that set, I'm just eyeballing it here real quick. So there again, with that set vertical, perfectly 90 degrees to the fuselage, using your reference line, your straight edge as a reference, verify that the ailerons are in fact in trail with the wing on both sides. So we've already done all that, right? Make sure the stick stays at 90 degrees. Now if you have one, you could use your digital level. Pick a spot on the aileron. So from the wingtip, I come over 1, 2, 3, 4 ribs, which is roughly center of the aileron. And then I also will place it 1, 2, 3, 4-ish rivets back. So I place it about like that. So for me, I just go from the edge. I'll come 1, 2, 3, 4 ribs over. And then from the forward skin seam here, if you will, I'll come back 1, 2, 3, 4. So rivet 3 and 4. Put your digital scale on there, turn it on, and reset 0 to this orientation. So again, verify that the stick 90 degrees to the fuselage. Verify that your ailerons are in fact in trail, which we've already done multiple times. So this is your 0 point. So now this is where you want your level to read 0. So reset it to 0 in this configuration. And then, try to do this one-handed again. Deflect your aileron all the way up. And of course you'll take a measurement with it all the way up and then deflect it all the way down, and again you'll take a measurement. And you can hear the stop, so make sure that you're hitting the stop when it's up. That's the stop here, and then when you go all the way down you'll hear the up stop on the other aileron. And then take your digital readings. Full max deflection up is 32 degrees and max deflection down is 17. And you want to do this exact same thing on the other side. Once you have your level zeroed on an aileron, leave it there. Leave it zeroed or leave it set. Make note of what your deflections are on that aileron. Come around to your second aileron and do the same thing. From the tip, you want to come over the same number of ribs, and then whichever rivets you decide, put your digital scale in that same location and have it facing the same direction. So if you remember, on that side of the airplane, I had it facing me this way. On this aileron, I want it facing the same way. I don't want to turn it around. So in the exact same location on this aileron, you hold it in place. Again, you haven't reset anything. You reset it to 0 on that side. When everything was in trail, that was your 0. And then you checked for 32 this way and 17 this way. Bring it over to this aileron and check it. You should get the same numbers as you had gotten on that side, or very close. So for me personally, thankfully, I got 32 degrees up travel on that aileron. On this one, I got 32.1 degrees of travel. On that aileron, I think I had 17 down exactly, and on this one, I think I had 16.9 down, something like that. So I'm getting full deflection, and from one side to the other, they're, for lack of a better term, they're the same. So again, I'm not going to split hairs. Even if I wanted to at this point, I don't know how I would do it, but I don't care. And then of course, so I've got max deflection in both directions on both ailerons, and they are both the same amount of deflection on both. And of course, you also want to make sure at this point that you have full deflection without any binding. You can hear solid stop there, solid stop here. I can't pull it back all the way. I can't go aft because I've got a piece of wood down in there stopping it to hold it somewhat vertical, but I can go forward. Same thing. Those are my springs for my aileron trim. So of course, when you have this, I don't have it connected to the elevators. So it basically stops when the push-pull tubes hit the access holes down here. And when it does that, the springs rub a little bit. But I won't have this kind of travel when I have the elevators connected. But still, you want to check for full engagement without binding. Okay, now I think I can move on to the flaps, but we'll see. Howdy, everyone. All right, so, oops, almost dropped the camera. I am laying underneath the right wing, working on the autopilot servo. So I've got, right now I have the control stick up in the cockpit, again, 90 degrees to the fuselage. I've checked the wing tips, or I've checked the ailerons at the wing tips to make sure that they're still in the neutral position, along with the stick being at the 90 degrees. I verified all that, and I went ahead and I've got the linkage connected now to the autopilot servo. And I know the lighting sucks, but let me try a light. So you can see with the ailerons in the neutral position, you can see the arm here of the servo is roughly 90 degrees to the servo body. So the arm itself is perpendicular to the servo body. And then, wow, that's dark. So when I do full deflection in one direction, you can hear the stop. I'll do it again. You'll hear the stop. So it is all the way deflected. And I've looked up in here really close. Now, if you can imagine the center line of the rod end over here, the center point of the rod end is basically even with the body of the servo. And I know that probably doesn't make a lot of sense, but just when you have it deflected all the way in one direction, just take a reference point on the arm itself. So roughly the center point of this rod end, if you can imagine like the center of this bolt is roughly in line with the edge of the body of the servo itself. And then when I go full deflection the other way, again, you'll see, if you can imagine the center line of the rod end or the center line of this bolt is roughly in line with the very edge of the servo body. So I've got the servo itself perfectly aligned with the arm is 90 degrees to the body of the servo, and with it in that position, the ailerons are in the neutral position. And then when I get full deflection one way, the arm moves a certain amount. When I get full deflection the opposite way, the arm moves that same amount, but in the opposite direction. So it is now nicely centered. I've got full deflection, and everything's good to go. So now I think I can move on to the flaps, but we'll see. Well, I am still not working on the flaps, and here's why. Going back to the regular written instructions that is supplied with the kit, the next step in the wing process is the bracket for the fuel tank. So when you look at drawing 38, you have this bracket here, which needs to be fitted to the fuel tank bracket here. So here is what I plan to do. Once you have this bracket fitted, you have to use the pre-cut slit here kind of as a guide to drill the hole through the aluminum bracket that's on the wing or on the fuel tank. The first thing you need to do is put a bend in this right here. Those dimensions are given to you here. But what I did was simply this. I held the bracket up against the fuselage by hand, and then I just came from this back side. I held the bracket in place by hand up against the fuselage. And then I just came with a Sharpie marker and I traced this here. I traced along this onto this bracket. I did the same on both sides. And then at that point, all I had done was measure from this flat flange here. I measured from here out to the high point of my tracing mark. And then I came back like another 1/8 of an inch this way from that high point. And using a square off of this flange, I drew a line. And I did that on both brackets. So maybe you can see, I don't know if that will show the black line that's right here. So again, I had traced the curve of this piece onto this piece, and then I measured from this face of the flange out to that high point of this arc, and then I left an additional 1/16 to an 1/8 of an inch off of that, and then drew my line. And this line is parallel to this flange, and that's where I did my bend, and that seemed to work pretty good. So you can see that I've got the bracket bolted to the fuselage on both sides, this side here and on this side here. And there's a hair of a gap between this piece and this piece. Again, I am not going to split hairs, so you can see if I can bring that together very easily just pinching it with my fingers. So next up is to drill the hole through here. But again, I think the lighting's better on this side. All I had done, or all I plan on doing, I laid up underneath the wing. And again, using a Sharpie marker, I just went ahead and traced this slot. I basically traced this end of this bracket onto this bracket using a Sharpie. When I take the wing off, I'll go ahead and I'll find a center point between this edge of the slit and the outer edge of the part I'll find center of that, make sure that I have good edge distance, and then I'll drill the hole through this with it off the wing. So at this point, all I did was just go ahead and trace this outline, and I'll drill the hole after I get everything disassembled. So that's all I'm going to do for now on these tank brackets. Of course, I'll have to prime them before I put them back in place permanently because they're steel. So now that that's done, maybe I can move on to the flaps. We'll see. Howdy everyone. Well, guess what? I am finally working on the flaps. Well, kind of sort of working on them. So I need to figure out how to mount that curved piece that I had made in this tunnel area that ultimately will have the notches cut into it for the manual flap handle to engage into. Before I do that, I need to get this push rod installed. This is the F789 push rod, and I know a lot of people struggle with trying to figure out how to get this push rod installed in this tunnel with everything assembled. So here's how to do it. I'm going to do this one-handed. This tube is made exactly to the plans. It might be about 1/8 of an inch longer, but it's made to the plans. I do not have the rod ends installed. So you can see it's just the threaded end, which is riveted in place, no rod ends on either end. I've got that end taped just to keep it from marring the aluminum, but it's not necessary. So here's the rod, and you'll notice that I'm on the outside of this upright. So this is, I think this is the 706 bulkhead here. It's the bulkhead with the vertical upright just off center, and it holds the bell crank for the elevator. So put your push rod tube on the right side of that, and then you can feed it through the hole in this bulkhead here. I think you can see that. And then just slide it all the way forward. It will go all the way up to the center spar, or that, what is that, 704, the main wing spar. Just slide it up into that. I'm trying to do this one-handed. And hold the camera. And when you get it up there all the way into that forward corner, back here at this end, you're already in. You're in the tunnel now. So then just drag it through. Just drag it back through the hole here. And you can make your connections. You can make your connection here for the bell crank. So you can connect it right down there on the bell crank. And then of course down at that end, down here at this end here, you can connect the control linkage. All right, so that's it. So again, all you really have to do is just feed it on the right side of this vertical piece through your hole here. Run it all the way forward so it's up against the web of this spar here in the corner. And then it will drop right into the tunnel and you'll be all set. So now that I have that, I'll get this connected at both ends. And then I'll make sure, I'm going to have to figure out how to put my piece across here and not have it interfere with the tube, because the tube rides up higher than the floor. But I'll work on that tomorrow. All right, so that's that. Talk to you later.